We moved back into our house January 31st of 2020. My husband deployed for a supposedly 3-month deployment on February 1st, 2020. And March 17th was our grand reopening for our childcare in Los Angeles County. Well, unfortunately, that was also the exact day that they released our stay-at-home order in Los Angeles County, and nobody came. By April 1st, we knew that daycare wasn't going to be coming back anytime soon. Our city had opened a free for essential workers daycare within walking distance of my house. I had no students. We weren't going to be able to reopen. So that was where he and I started looking at entrepreneurship as a way to support our family through our own systems. And it was amazing. And I loved it. And that was also the origin to the Society of Child Entrepreneurs.
I'm Brandon Reed, and you're listening to Ready, Set, Startup, a podcast that brings you industry-tested perspectives from leaders working in all areas of the startup lifecycle, so you can learn from the wisdom that they've gained over years in their fields of expertise and apply it in your own entrepreneurial journeys. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm talking with Leah Ellis, founder of the Society of Child Entrepreneurs. What started as a living room conversation between Leah and her daughter has grown into a full-scale nonprofit organization helping kids to learn critical life skills like financial literacy, creative problem solving, leadership, and the power of ownership. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a parent who would say that teaching their children any of those skills is unimportant. But the trouble comes when you ask if parents feel equipped with the tools that they need to help their kids grow in those ways. Well, Leah's organization is on a mission to help solve that problem. Through in-person teaching, hands-on involvement, and real-world application, kids get the opportunity to learn what it means to see the world through a solution-oriented lens. Then, even more powerfully, how to be a part of meeting that need, of building the solution. This is an area that I'm uniquely passionate about as a father of 3 young kids, and I loved hearing from Leah about what she's learned and how she's working to realize a vision that all parents have for their children, that they be equipped with practical tools that help them build a fulfilling life that puts good into the world and joy into their hearts. This isn't Leah's first stab at making an impact through business. As far as she can remember, she was seeking ways to solve other people's problems in a way that brought value to them and extra spending money to her, starting with Millennials Rejoice custom MySpace profiles.
So I go way back with entrepreneurship. I was one of those kids that was like doing lemonade stands, and do you remember those plastic canvases that you could put yarn through? I like sold stuff that I made with yarn and plastic canvas, make money, and beads and bracelets, like clear back in elementary school. But I didn't really start taking it seriously as a way to make money until high school. And I'm of the MySpace generation.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're about my age, so you're probably
MySpace baby.
generation too. I taught myself HTML so that I could make MySpace profile layouts and sell them to my classmates.
Okay.
So they paid me $5 in school. I went home, made their layout, sent it to them, and told them how to put it on their profile.
Nice.
So they all had these super cool profiles, but I was the one programming them all. And it was awesome because it was my money. I could do with whatever I wanted. And the truth of the matter is, most of it was cheese stuffed breadsticks at lunch because those were my jam.
Of course.
I was a vegetarian in high school, so there's
Is there a higher standard to be called to? Yeah, that's great.
Exactly. That was where all my money went, but I was happy for it. And I didn't have to get lunch money from my mom, so she was happy that I wasn't wasting her money.
Yeah.
Once I was a little older, I always thought I was going to be a teacher. Then college didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. I had a very narcissistic stepdad, and it became a weapon, and it just was not for me at that point in my life. So I got married and had a baby instead. And entrepreneurship through, all the moms do those direct sales companies. So that kind of like freedom of direct sales became my next step in entrepreneurship. And then I owned an in-home daycare. And that was the first time my entrepreneurship was me, myself, and I. And I really got to get ingrained in what my business was and what my model was and what I cared about and how I was going to price. And I loved it. Unfortunately, my childcare, we discovered 10 years worth of black mold in the walls of the house I had owned for 18 months. And so we had to shut down our daycare in 2019. And we thought, we'll get the house fixed, I'll go right back to it, no big deal. We moved back into our house January 31st of 2020. My husband deployed for a supposedly 3-month deployment on February 1st, 2020. And March 17th was our grand reopening for our childcare in Los Angeles
Oh
County.
my goodness.
Well, unfortunately, that was also the exact day that they released our stay-at-home order in Los Angeles County, and nobody came. By April 1st, we knew that daycare wasn't going to be coming back anytime soon. Our city had opened a free for essential workers daycare within walking distance of my house. I had no students. We weren't going to be able to reopen. So my husband and I decided to start a financial coaching company together. It was something we were both passionate about. We could do the trainings and build the company while he was deployed. And I could do the trainings while I was at home with our daughters because we had an 18-month-old and a 4-year-old that I needed to take care of during COVID. So that was where he and I started looking at entrepreneurship as a way to support our family through our own systems. And it was amazing. And I loved it. And that was also the origin to the Society of Child Entrepreneurs by accident. Because while my husband and I were starting our business, I was watching business training videos on the living room TV. And in May, my 4.5-year-old came up to me and said, "Mom, I want to start a business too." I said, "No, you're 4. You can't start a business." And as any good God-given 4-year-old would say, she looked at me and she said, "Why?" Well, I had no answer because she had already watched her mom be a serial entrepreneur. Mom and dad were always starting new businesses. She didn't know why she couldn't do it too. She wanted to be just like mommy. So we let her start her first business, Melody Paints, when she was 4.5. She, after COVID, did some children's business fairs. And when we moved to Kansas is when we really started to build something new because we hosted our first children's business fair. And then the educator in me kind of had a heart attack because we had all of these kids that were really excited to learn something really new and really impactful. And instead of teaching them, we sent them home because the event was over. And with a history in education and entrepreneurship, I couldn't let that stand. So I convinced some friends to be the board of directors, and we started our nonprofit, the Society of Child Entrepreneurs. And now I get to teach entrepreneurship to kids starting at 6 years old.
Amazing. That's awesome. And what a neat road to where you are now. So that as you got it started, would you have considered it, was it like you and your husband as the co-founders, or did all your board technically co-found? How did that work?
So I did it all. My husband was kind enough to let me pull some of money out of our joint bank account for a founder's loan, but that was the extent of his involvement. Was he gave me a loan for all of our startup costs. My board of directors jumped on as my legally required group of people, but weren't really involved in the day-to-day. And over the last year and a half, I've gotten several new board members, and they are a lot more involved. But that initial board was literally just, what is the IRS requirement, and are you willing to back this or not?
And so when you started doing this and you started doing it full time, were you doing anything else, or was this your full-time focus, or was this on the side when you first got started?
So even still now, this is 40 hours a week in my office, but I also substitute teach. And I actually still, because I'm a serial entrepreneur, I own a wedding company. So I also run my wedding company and substitute teach and run this.
So tell me a little bit more. I have more like specific questions about you building the company, about how you're scaling, about how you're thinking about customers and all those things. But let's give a little bit more background on what it is you guys do. Give me the mission and vision, kind of give me the quick pitch of what it is you guys do, how you do it.
It kind of comes down to, our mission is to teach entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and leadership to kids through hands-on experiences. And the vision for that is when kids
Kids
are
being
given
defined as like what ages?
6 through 17.
6 to 17. Cool.
And when our children are given these abilities as children, we create a future with adults who are actively engaged in their communities and understand the impact they can have on society. And we decrease the apathy that people in our generation have, because many people our age were told, just wait, Let the grown-ups handle it. We'll do it later. You're too young. You don't know what you're talking about. And then by the time we're old enough, none of us care anymore. Half of our generation is like, I don't care. Let somebody else deal with it. And with the Society of Child Entrepreneurs, we're teaching these kids that they can be the problem solvers and they don't need to wait.
Cool. Awesome. And so how do you do that? How do you go about that? How do you teach financial literacy, leadership, these things?
So it all starts very hands-on. So all of our kids have a business, whether it's a really developed business or if it's just something very small, and they set up their booths at the children's business fairs and they sell their marketing. They do their marketing, they talk to strangers, they sell their products, they create them, they run their inventory, they have to do their budgets. And so then when they come to my workshops with me and I'm able to say, remember at this booth, you had X problem. Here's a theory on how you can solve it. What do you think? What works? What doesn't work? Okay, now test it. And so they're constantly practicing, building knowledge, practicing again, building knowledge. So there's constantly a reiteration of their entrepreneurial abilities as well as their confidence in being entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we also have for people who aren't local, because I am in a small town and there's only so many people who can come into my office, we have what we call the Sochi Circle. And it's an online platform where people can come in and they can join and they can discuss. The kids can talk to each other about what their business problems are. Grown-ups can talk to each other about how they can be the guides and supporters for their child entrepreneurs. And then I share lesson plans there. So if you teach a homeschool group, an after-school program, or even just want to do something with your own kids at your dining room table, you can print out those lesson plans and teach these materials.
Awesome. And so you mentioned a couple times, like, was it kids business fair? What are those? How do you find those? How do you get involved?
All right, so yeah, children's business fairs are essentially a farmer's market, but all the businesses are kids. So they're
Are they
generally
pretty
going to be
popular? I mean, are they in most cities?
They can be.
Mm.
So I use an organization called Acton Children's Business Fairs to host all of my fairs. And what's great about Acton is they run all of the back end software for you. They run the application process for you. They even pay you $10 per kid after your fair to pay for prize money and everything like that. So Acton is a great resource. And you can go to their website, childrensbusinessfairs.org, and apply to be a host anywhere in the world. Those are fantastic. And that's how we do our children's business fairs is through Acton. But then once we set up that this is the date, time, and location of our business fair, the children apply. We get to approve each application. And then on the day of, we bring in other entrepreneurs to interview the kids. They have judges' criteria, and we give out cash prizes for winners in each age group.
And that, sorry, did you say that was at different days, or is that all part of the fair? People come in, talk, and
It's all
prizes.
part of the fair.
Okay, cool,
So
awesome. And
the kids, usually the kids will come in. We have set up from 12 to 1:30. 1:45 is the okay, we're done. Setup is done. Celebrate. Let's get ready. 2 o'clock, we open the doors. By 2:30, judges are going around asking questions. 3:45, judges are done. At 4:45, we announce winners, and at 5 o'clock, we shut down and we start tearing down things.
okay,
So
awesome.
it's
Yeah.
literally just a handful of hours in their day. They're done. Start at noon and they're done by 5:30.
That's so cool. And I'm asking more operational questions because so many of my listeners are founders themselves, and a lot of them are young founders, specifically as they get started. And so they have younger kids. And I think that a lot of people, obviously, if they've chosen a path of entrepreneurship for themselves, are interested in their kids exploring that. They can understand and know the benefits, like you were saying, of just do whatever you want to do in your life. But how do you become an effective problem solver? How do you see things in different ways and approach it creatively? And I love what you're doing and want to hear more about it. So let me also ask about. Let me look at my note because I took notes so that I would remember my questions. How are you getting this out to the community? How do people know about this? I mean, like you might be posting on like Facebook, but is this something you're partnering with other schools, with homeschool co-ops? How do you get the word out?
So we have a fan club on Facebook and we do a little bit there. But I do a lot of podcasts so I can talk to people all over the world and tell them about our program. And then in person, we're members of our local chamber of commerce, a
Mm-hmm.
local business association. And then we're also members of a very specific, very niche women's entrepreneurship group. And so we are able to find a lot of people through those groups, both for our board of directors, for sponsorships, and for parents who want to bring their kids in, which is so much fun. But I do a lot of networking lunches and a lot of going out and interviewing people. And then we are partnering right now with a local school's choice school. So it's a public school, but with an alternative format. So children can kind of pick their own schedules. So we're an elective there, and children
Okay.
can take our class through that program. And we are working with 2 local school districts to build an after school club so that 2 days a week kids can stay after school and build businesses with me. And then we have a grant that we just wrote that, it'll be 6 to 8 months before we hear if we got the money or not. But that grant will now allow us to teach in 3 rural cities. So we can
Okay.
go outside of Sedgwick County being the largest county in Kansas and move outside of Sedgwick County and move to some of these smaller communities and be able to offer them these programs as well.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you make this. I know it's a nonprofit, but a business. I mean, this sounds like an amazing thing. You, as a mom and businesswoman, are passionate about. You want to see your community improved. You say, "Hey, guys, let's start teaching these things to children. I care about this." Okay, great, and I could see people getting behind that. But then, how do you then make it a business? How do you treat this like a business? In what ways is it, and is it not like a typical business?
And that's a lot of questions, and I have a whole bunch of answers for
Okay.
it. So first and foremost, I'm sure being in entrepreneurship, you've heard of Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Yep.
I worked with Mike at Profit First Professionals. I was one of the guides who taught accountants and bookkeepers
Okay.
how to implement Profit First with their businesses.
Okay.
And Profit First as a budgeting and money management philosophy applies to any business. And really, actually, Mike's book came out
Sure.
today. You can apply it to personal finance. And so we still run very specific budgeting for our nonprofit. We don't throw money around crazily, especially because we're a nonprofit and we need to honor the donations that come into us. And that means when we spend money, we're always looking at what is the return on the investment in that. And then we're always making sure that we have things that
Mm-hmm.
make people remember us. So we wrote this
Nice.
book, Sparks to Stars. You can see here's Astra and Zeke here. Well, if you look behind me, Astra and Zeke are on the wall behind me as well. They're our mascots. And so I think part of how we make sure this is a memorable business is Astra and Zeke are very present so that the children can relate to what we're doing. Because when kids ask for your program, parents figure out how to pay for it because they're excited that their kids are interested in something. It's the same reason why I figured out how to pay for dance for my daughter when she told me she wanted to learn how to jeté. That's what you do. And then the other thing is whenever we host our events, when we host a get together, a fundraiser, everything is structured so that people understand the professionalism of it. We're not just the cute local charity with kids. We're an organization providing nationwide education on entrepreneurship for children in a way that they enjoy.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So as you think about this as a business and you're building it, how are you? I understand in your community, you're partnering with local chambers of commerce. That makes sense. You're part of networking groups. But how are you growing this thing? How are you growing it beyond? You just mentioned we're providing nationwide, curriculum or education, however you said it, to the country,
Yeah.
to the kids of the country. And how are you doing that? What's your plan? How do you grow from here?
So right now, all of our in-person classes are here in Goddard, and I love it, and I love teaching in person. But with our online platform now having lesson plans, more people can teach these classes in person. And the goal is, I'm going to say 2028 at least, we'll start opening satellite branches or separate chapters where people like you who have kids and business and excitement about this kind of stuff can take it on as a part-time job where realistically you would only need to spend 6 to 8 hours a week on it, and you get to teach these programs as well.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
And then we'll have these chapters with little minor local directors all over the country so that we're teaching it in person in more places.
How do you think about, let's see, like product offering defensibility? How do you, who else is out there doing this kind of thing? How do you set yourself apart from what they're doing? And how do you make what you're offering defensible to that?
So there are other organizations that teach entrepreneurship to kids. I mean, we have Junior Achievement, we have the My Lemonade Day program, there's
Mm,
Yippee Exchange, which is all entrepreneurship programs for schools, and there's Young CEO Club. There's lots of businesses that have been started with the purpose of selling entrepreneurship to kids, and lots of nonprofits started with the purpose of teaching work readiness, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and things like that to kids. The thing that makes our program so different from all of these other programs is we're the only one that blends real life with instruction. So Yippee Academy has a whole bunch of different curriculum that teachers can purchase and they can teach in their classroom. Junior Achievement is a program that you go into the classroom and you teach it to the kids and then they go home, and it's all role play and fake. My Lemonade Day has a really cool app, but it doesn't have any follow through on making sure that people are doing things in person. Whereas our program, we have amazing, robust curriculum that's standards aligned and really gets the kids thinking about financial literacy, social and emotional learning, top 40 skills from the Search Institute. But then we follow up all of those lessons with, okay, now do it. And every lesson has a hands-on, impactful application that comes back to real world money. So the kids are really dealing with their own money and their own finances, and it stops being imaginary.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I'm sure every group has some degree of, hey, here's some knowledge, here's what you might do with it. But it sounds like you guys really take the next step and even create the opportunity at maybe these fairs to do. I love, you mentioned earlier, you go back, you guys, you say, all right, we just did the fair. How'd that go? Do you remember that problem you encountered? How'd you solve it? Learn
Right.
from that. Let's go back and apply it again when we get together or do another fair. And I think that's really, really important and really cool. And I could totally see how that'd separate you. How do you fund this thing? You said you just, wrote a grant. You'll see if you guys get funded. But how do you think about funding? Are you looking for outside investors? Are you looking for equity partnerships? How are you? I don't know how that works with nonprofit and equity and distributions. But how do you think about how this thing makes money and is sustainable, profitable? Well,
Right.
not profitable, nonprofit, but
Non-profitable.
sustainable is what I mean.
Right. So the biggest thing is there is no equity. I mean, it is citizen owned, it's donor
Okay,
owned if you put in money. So I can't say, okay, you give me a donation, you get a portion of what
got
we've
it.
done. But it also means if you donate money to us, you get a tax write off of those charitable
Yep.
contributions to what you give us. So we are always looking for donors. We do a minimum of 8 events per year. So always sponsorships at those events, because that gives you the opportunity to have your brand in front of the kids, in front of their parents, in front of their shoppers. We always have a sponsorship table of who sponsored our event, even if they're not a child entrepreneur. And those are always really fun because, again, get your brand in front of the kids, because then the kids ask for it and the parents figure out how to make it happen. So those sponsorships are very helpful. And then, of course, like any nonprofit, we have those monthly donors who sign up for that, donate $50 a year. So we get a certificate that says, I'm a donor for the Society of Child Entrepreneurs. And they have that monthly recurring donation for their membership that comes through. And then, of
Okay.
course, the Sochi Circle and our membership groups are also revenue streams for us where we bring in money to continue developing programs.
Cool. Awesome.
So, yeah, we have lots of little streams. That's what an entrepreneur does.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You figure it out. You guys are obviously at the core of what you're doing, you're very mission driven. And as you grow this organization, get other people involved, whether that be on the board or other people helping you write curriculum or however you guys grow and whatever you end up doing, how do you pass that vision on? This is a question that goes to every entrepreneur that I have on the show. I'm like, you have this initial vision, you're super sold on it, you're ready to build the company. When you start bringing other people into that, how do you maintain that? How do you transmute that from yourself to them and make sure that it becomes a sustainable and perpetual part of your ethos as an organization?
So, multifaceted. One is we pull a lot of our board members from the parents of our members. So
Oh, good
they're
idea.
already recipients of our program and they understand the impact of it. So when we pull them into the board as help us run this, then they see what they're helping to manage. So we get a lot of our board members from that. And then we get a lot of board members from other entrepreneur networks who understand the value of networking and supporting business through building one another up. That whole a rising tide lifts all boats.
Mhm.
And then we also, another thing that sets us apart from a lot of other organizations, we believe in the phrase nothing about us without us. And so if we're going to be the Society of Child Entrepreneurs, we also have a child board of directors. So we call it our junior board of directors. We have 5 members who they have monthly board meetings, and we have a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and junior executive director. And those 5 kids help manage this program. So
Hmm.
when occasionally the adults start feeling like the money's too tight or the program is too big or what are the non-negotiables, we can go back to the kids and say, what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that this program stands for? And how do we keep everybody on the same page? And then the other benefit we have is another Mike book. Mike wrote a book called All In, and he writes about how giving your staff or your board member ownership over programming gives them the desire for that thing to be successful. So all of our grown-ups have something they own, and that is their zone of genius, their project, their baby, that thing that we rely on them for. So they don't feel like I'm micromanaging them and saying like, this is what you should be doing. Why didn't you do it this way? It's, hey, I need you to make sure that all of the details for this children's business fair are taken care of, and then tell me where to go.
Hmm.
And then they do it. And then they don't feel like they're just at their job or they're just at a volunteer role because they own that project.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Nothing about us without us. And I think that that's an incredible way to then further instill leadership, a lot of other things, the intangible soft skills in those kids to be a part of something like a board and to have consensus and quorum and discussion and debate. That's really, really neat.
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And gives people, I mean, gives kids within the organization who are getting involved a way to get more involved, a way to say,
Mhm.
like, this is clicking with me. I really, really like this. This is, the favorite thing I'm a part of. How do I get more involved? Well, you can come to the next fair, or hey, you can be on our board actually have a voice in like what we do with this thing, and that's really cool.
In November, we had a junior board of directors meeting, and the junior board wrote the topic list for all of our 2026 member masterminds.
Okay.
So they determined what are the 12 most important things that they want to learn about at their monthly meetings.
Hmm.
And then I just simply took their list so that I can write the lesson plans and discussion points, and it's their program.
Again, yeah, instilling ownership and helping them to really feel all in because they are all in and they have ownership.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me something that you have found. This is just such a unique organization, and that you're having children's board meetings. I mean, that's super unique, right? And so, what's something that you have found though that has been consistent across either being in or running or founding an organization with adults, and then doing the same thing and operating with kids involved? What's something that you have found has translated directly of like, listen, they could be 11 and they could be 51. This is still true as it relates to operating the organization and making sure it's running smoothly.
So we were working on our strategic plan for 2026, and every single person that we met with from 10 to 54-ish, 52-ish, every one of them told me the most important thing is stability and knowing that the program is always going to look the same
Hmm.
and that they always know what to expect and they understand where the growth is coming from. And so I think one thing is no matter how long you've been an entrepreneur, you understand that you have to be reliable and consistent for your customers.
Hmm.
And that's really what they were telling me when they wanted it to be
Yeah.
stable.
Yeah.
They want it to be consistent and they want it to be reliable. And then regardless of age, when you're sitting in those board meetings, everybody wants to feel that their voice is heard.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think for kids specifically, that idea of like, hey, what's this going to look like in 3 years? What's it going to look like in 5 years? That stability, that predictability is just so core to kids as they grow to like
Mhm.
understand, what am I a part of? Is this something that's going to be sticking around? Am I going to be, they wouldn't articulate it like this, but like, am I going to be investing my time into something that ultimately kind of comes out from under me and then, changes or becomes something that I no longer align with? And so that would make sense to provide that stability to be important.
Right.
How do you deal with and teach? What's in your curriculum around the topic of failure? Obviously, so important with kids, that you're teaching them to be resilient, and entrepreneurship is just a great way to do that, in a vehicle to, or a medium rather, to teach that. How do you deal with failure? How do you talk about that?
I showed you the Astra and Zeke book.
Hmm.
That book will eventually be the first book of what will probably be around 36 books. So, one of the books that is written but not published and then goes with an entire lesson plan is on failing. And in this particular story, Astra and Zeke have a client who comes to them and she says she's shutting down her business. She's giving up. She's never going to run her business again because she set up a sales booth to sell her slime at the playground. Nobody bought from her, not even her grandma. So she's giving up on business, right? Because that's what we all want to do initially. We're sad, we're heartbroken, we give up so it can't hurt us again. But Astra and Zeke are able to ask her some questions. What went wrong? What else was in the park? Where were you in relation to the playground? And answer these questions on product placement. Where is it on the shelf in Walmart? On accessibility. Her jars were so tightly closed, nobody could sample her slime. And nobody wants to buy slime they couldn't sample first. So she's looked at her placement and her accessibility. And then we look at the convenience of it. She was selling slime right next to the slide. Nobody wants slime when they're running onto the playground. They want slime closer to the parking lot when they're leaving so they can play with it in the car. So then they tell her, no, look, you haven't failed. You have a good product. You were just in the wrong place. So let's fail forward by making a new iteration. Let's reiterate your program with a new package in a new place and see if it works better. And then she goes and she does it and she's like, I didn't fail. And they were like, no, you failed forward. Because that's what every part of being an entrepreneur is saying, this didn't work, reiterate. This wasn't the way I wanted it to be, try again. This one frustrated me, make it smoother. And making it so that you and your customer feel like there's not friction and there is joy in that exchange.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, reframing a failure as a problem to solve, as something that can be solved rather than something that's unsolvable and then you would give up on.
Right.
Really cool. I have a couple closing questions that I ask everybody that I have on the show, but I'm going to change it a little bit for you because you just have a lot of really unique and specific knowledge. And as I think about, as I put, which I always try to do, put myself in my listeners' shoes and say, if I was listening to this episode, what would I want to know? I think I would want to know, what are some things you recommend? And if that's your curriculum or anything, please tell us where to get it. Give us your URLs, shout it out for sure. And then anything else, even as I get started with my kids, I'm like, all right, let's start talking about money. Let's start getting that in the vernacular, start helping you understand. And like, I went on long, multiple searches of like where, and I came up with like, in the end, like 13 books and a couple workbooks, and that was it. And we flew through the books. The workbooks are a little bit past them, so like I'm waiting for those. And I'm like, where else do I have to go from here? So like, what resources can you point parents to who'd be interested to teach their kids, not just about entrepreneurship, but about that critical piece of financial literacy?
Okay, so that's a very loaded question, and I have answers for all of it.
Okay.
First and foremost, if you really want to start talking about entrepreneurship with your kids, the first thing you have to do at the dinner table tonight is look at your kid and say, what's one problem at school, at home, or in the city that annoys you, and how would you solve it? Because that's the first step of entrepreneurship. Find a problem, create a solution, and then you start helping them figure out how to monetize that solution. So there's your introduction for a 7-year-old to entrepreneurship. What's the problem and how would you solve it? You're only allowed to say how. How does that work? How would you make it? How would you build it? How would you find the money for this? You're not allowed to tell them anything. You just simply take notes and let them talk. And then you start looking for resources to help them build. So that's how you can introduce entrepreneurship regardless of how old you are or how old your child is. And you can find, again, resources on the Sochi Circle, which is school/Sochi Circle or whatever. I'm sure it'll be in your show notes because
Yeah,
you're amazing with
I'll
those
put
kind of
them on
things.
there.
They can go to the Sochi Circle and they can find, I have even like worksheets on, is entrepreneurship right for me? And what is my role as the adult for my entrepreneur child
Mm-hmm.
in the Sochi Circle? So that's how you can start entrepreneurship. Financial literacy, you literally need to start talking about money with your kids when they're 4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 4 or 5 years old, you should be talking about money. We were really strict in our house. So my daughter had like a list of chores And every chore she did, she got a dime. And because we really wanted to make her not do naughty things, if she got in trouble, then just like you get a speeding ticket, she would get a fine and she would have to pay me a nickel for fines. So she learned like what it's like to have a fine from the police, how to earn your money. But once she had gotten her paycheck for the week, all of her money had exactly 3 jobs. And your money as an adult still has the same 3 jobs. Every grown up you talk to, all of us have exactly 3 choices when it comes to money. And those 3 choices are spend it, save it, or give it away. And as we get older, we give saving a whole bunch of big fancy names, and we give giving starts being like tithing and charitable contributions and all these other things. But at the end of the day, it's all spending, saving, and giving. And so my daughter would get her allowance for the week, and she had 4 little envelopes: short-term saving, long-term saving, which is where she was saving for college and cars, spending, and giving. And she had to put at least 1 dime in each envelope before she was allowed to decide what she was doing with everything else. And then the rest of it was up to her to decide how much did she want to save versus how much did she want to spend and how much was going in her giving. You can do that with your kid regardless of how old they are and regardless of how much money they're earning. You can do it with dimes, you can do it with nickels, you can't do it with pennies anymore. And you can do it with $100 bills. At the end of the day, as long as you are teaching your kid that they must spend, save, and give in order to be financially well, you will have given them a stronger start than what most of our culture gets.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then if you want to take it a step further, teach them how to really be truthful with themselves on needs versus wants.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can separate needs from wants and they can be financially well, you won't ever have to worry about them.
Yeah, that's awesome. We bucket out every dollar that comes into any of our kids into 4, well, not our baby yet, but our 2 older, and we into 4 buckets, and one is invest. How do you deal with investing?
Right. So with our kids, their invest would be their long-term savings where they're saving for college
Mm,
and cars. And they put their cash into their cash envelope. And then usually once a month, once every 2 months, I'll take all their cash out of their envelope. They'll give it to me and I'll tell them, now I'm putting this in the bank. I put it in the bank and I do put it in their college fund. And they get their bank statements mailed to them and they can open it up and they can see how much money they have in the bank. They can see how it's growing. So they understand, even though they can't touch that money, they're touching the statement that shows what that money is doing. And it keeps it real for them.
yeah, that's awesome. It's I don't even know what my 7-year-old is at now. I don't know, $20 maybe. But we put even as a dollar at a time. We just put them into actual stocks. We just say,
Yeah.
I pick a few, we put them in, and then we like roll it up into a portfolio view. And then when we pull it up, he gets to watch. He's like, oh my gosh, we made a little bit of money. And then it's like, whoa, hey, I used to have $20, and it's like, yeah, well, right now it's 16.50, son. Like that's how it works.
Right. That's
And that's really it's just an engaging. He really likes that. He likes to pull it up.
right. Well, and it's so much fun because they get to be, one, proud that that's theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And two, you're teaching them like the stock market can be scary,
Mm-hmm.
but over the long term, statistically and historically, it doesn't lose money permanently.
Yep.
There are highs and lows, but it is still statistically grows.
Yep.
And then teaching them, the other thing I would say is to teach him the different type of investment accounts. So
Mm-hmm.
mutual funds and whether it's red chip and all those different things
Yep.
so that he really understands all of those options. And again, not all at once. And use
Mm-hmm.
kid-friendly language. Mutual fund is when something costs $10, so we each pull in a dollar so that we can all have it. And then next week when it's worth $20, we all get $2 back out. There you
Mm-hmm.
go. You just taught a
There you go.
mutual fund to a 7-year-old.
Right. Right. Totally. Yeah. Not to overcomplicate. It's an important piece. Where can people find the Astra and Zeke books?
So the only one that's published right now is Sparks to Stars, and it is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Thrift Books, and my favorite place for you to buy it is bookshop.com. And the reason why I love bookshop.com so much is because they take that money that the bookseller would make and they reinvest that back into your local bookstores. So you
Cool.
get to pick one of your local bookstores and you get the convenience of buying it online and still supporting your local bookstores.
Neat. I didn't know about that. That's awesome.
It's the
Uh,
best.
yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, Leah, this was really great. I appreciate you sharing so much of this. I asked a lot about the different operational pieces of your business, but I dug a lot into like what is this and how can people find things like it or get involved directly, and took it a little bit of that direction because I think that's really interesting. I think people will be really interested to know that these things even exist. I mean, like a children's business fair. Oh yeah, like how can I search that in my area or get involved and directly participate? And I hope that people take that from this because I sure did. It was really, really good to talk to you.
Fantastic. And go host a children's business fair. You've got a 7-year-old, go do one.
Awesome.
You only have to have 10 kids for them to give you, or I think they just changed it to 15. You only need 15 kids and they'll pay you $150.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm on my son's school board, and I'm always looking for. I'm like the community and business development representative, and I need to figure out different ways that we can infuse business into the school. And this is certainly could be a powerful way to do that.
I have all those resources already written for you.
Nice, awesome.
I have a full after school program that you can meet twice a week for the whole school year.
That's cool. That's really neat. Yeah, I love it. I love that there's people out here doing it, and good on you. This is really, really great work, and thanks for taking the time to share this with my listeners today.
Thank you for letting me share this with your listeners and inspiring, hopefully, some more parents to ask their kids how.
For sure. Thanks, Leah. Bye-bye. If you guys enjoyed the show, leaving a review is the best way to help others find it, second only to sharing it directly with your friends and family. Thanks so much for helping get the word out. Hit me up at brandon@readysetstartuppod.com if you have additional questions about a topic I covered, have suggestions about another area you'd like to see me dig into, or just want to say hi. Please reach out. I'd love to get in touch. Keep imagining, keep creating, keep inspiring your spheres of influence with what you're passionate about. The world may just need that dream that's in your head. See you next time.
Resonate.